let's get to Pam Bondi and Jeffrey Epstein.
Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl, who will be hosting This Week later this morning. John, thanks for being with us. Exactly what Gio was just talking about. The reported firings at the Justice Department, they come as Attorney General Pam Bondi faces some backlash from some Trump supporters over the Epstein files. What's the president saying about her?
Yeah, we're going to take a deep dive into this rather murky story on This Week. It's a huge controversy that has pitted the MAGA movement, some of Trump's loudest and most prominent supporters, against Pam Bondi and others in the Trump administration over their promise to release the so-called Epstein files, the investigative records on the case of Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, was the convicted sex trafficker, financier who was found dead in his jail cell back in 2019. Pam Bondi is over the weekend. There was a big event in Tampa, a Turning Points USA event. This is the core of Trump's MAGA movement, and speaker after speaker was slamming her, blaming her for the fact that the material has not been released and apparently is not going to be released. But overnight, Donald Trump put out a lengthy Truth Social post, Janae. I mean, it's a long one. It goes on for a full page, saying that he effectively has complete confidence in Pam Bondi and saying, what is going on with my, quote, boys, and in some cases gals? They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is doing a fantastic job.
I mean, John, you described the story as murky. It just gets murkier. And thank you for showing us just how long that Truth Social post was. Also want to ask you about what you've heard about the timing and the reasons behind the timing for the new round of Trump tariffs.
This is some significant new tariffs against America's closest allies and biggest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, the European Union. They will go in effect on August 1st. Significant tariffs that were coming just as these countries were negotiating with the United States to try to get, some kind of a trade agreement in place. But it's basically happening because the president's, a 90-day pause that he announced is coming to a close, and he's following through with his threat to.
Dude, they fucking hit this line so much. They hit it so hard. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it's going away, dude. I think every time Trump talks about it, it makes things worse. Every time Trump talks about it, people get even more agitated where they're like, okay, dude, what the is happening? But I will say, it wasn't Trump that said something that freaked me out. It was Richie Torres. Now, I've talked extensively about how Jeffrey Epstein obviously was both an agent of the CIA and also Mossad as well. But it was Israel's attack dog, Richie Torres, going on television and saying these words that made me go, oh my God, there's got to be something that the Israeli state doesn't want out. Yes, I got the Tucker Carlson clip, and I will obviously cover Tucker Carlson's statements as well, even though he is a charlatan. And I know Richie Torres has changed his statement since he did that TV hit, but it was alarming that he even did that TV hit to begin with. Okay, where is it? Let me see if I can find it real quick, because it was truly, truly shocking. Does anyone have the Richie Torres statement? This is a bombshell. This is a gift given to the Democrats once again through Trump's pure incompetence. And here is Apex attack dog Richie Torres coming out on CNN and saying this.
Can we be clear that the Epstein controversy is a distraction of Donald Trump's own making? That he was fanning the flames of the Epstein conspiracy theory during the campaign, and so now he's essentially an arsonist pretending to be a firefighter. And there was no need for an investigation. The medical examiner had investigated the matter and found that Epstein died by suicide. The same conclusions were drawn by the Bureau of Federal Prisons. There was no need for a new investigation unless the purpose was to legitimize a conspiracy theory. Can we be clear that the Epstein controversy is a distraction?
When I saw this, I was like, oh, okay. Okay. This got to be a boss call. This got to be a Israel boss call. Because it's like, why else? Do you think Torres is on the list? No, dude. Torres is not. Torres is a random nobody when Jeffrey Epstein was popping off. He has since walked it back. And now he's saying, Dear Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, release the Epstein files. Whatever happened, the promises made, promises kept. But Richie Torres doesn't go on television and say anything unless it's something that Israel wants him to say. Okay? Just remember that. He doesn't go on TV to make statements unless it is directly a statement that Israel wants out there, even if he is a very person to make that statement, as is the case here. He's just not a very good communicator. That's why he looks silly here.
To impose very harsh tariffs on countries with whom we have not established a new trade agreement with.
I mean, John, we always say it's a busy news morning. It certainly is for you. Thank you so much for being with us. And make sure to tune in to This Week later this morning with John.
And this is the first topic that all of us as Americans, not as Democrats, not as liberals, not as Republicans, are actually lining together and saying we all want the Epstein files. And I said, come on, Donald, give us those files.
We are here at the Turning Point USA Summit in Tampa, Florida. It is a big gathering of Trump supporters. And one thing everybody seems to be talking about here this weekend, Jeffrey Epstein.
We need to get to the bottom of Epstein because Epstein is the key.
Dude, this guy saying that is so crazy because no one in that room knows this, but Steve Bannon literally had direct communications with Jeffrey Epstein and actually filmed a fake deposition that he set up for Jeffrey Epstein and has 15 hours of footage, which he claims he did because he wanted to actually investigate Jeffrey Epstein. But if that's the case, why hasn't he released the footage? If it's not actually a real deposition and or if he's not actually coaching him and it's an investigation, why the hasn't he released the footage?
That picks the lock.
Let me just ask you, make some noise if you care about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
This is Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit. It's an event aimed at mobilizing young conservatives. Ultimately, I mean, how bad do you think it would be for the MAGA movement, for young people's trust in Trump if by the end of his term they don't release everything they know about Epstein?
Well, I think that if they don't release the Epstein files, whatever J.D. Vance says then is irrelevant because it's like everybody's going to take it as like a lie because of what Donald Trump did. But I think J.D. Vance wants these files released as well. And I think that Donald Trump, he promised them, so he needs to do it. No matter who's on them, we need to release the Epstein files.
Because right now the whole debate's about Bongino versus Bondi, but ultimately it's Trump's decision, right? I mean, he has the power.
It's Trump's decision. It's Trump's decision. I think again, and I'm not going to make the decision for the president. It's not my job. It's not my place. But I do think the way that I'm seeing it played out is that Bongino will be here and Pam Bondi will be the fall guy.
You think that's fair?
I don't think anything's fair in politics.
And now to another big story. The president is defending U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. Her and FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino are reportedly at odds over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Chanley Painter.
Brother, this is a pivotal moment because this has been the rallying cry of the entire conservative media ecosystem. Oni Spumoni says the Epstein story is so great because it is the base saying they want it for themselves. They're so completely primed to getting what they want, and they thought they'd get this too, that now that they're not, they're literally eating themselves. Yeah. I personally have said over and over again that there was no way that they would reveal the actual Jeffrey Epstein files because it is a blackmail operation conducted by both the CIA and Mossad. Why would they do that? Okay? And I think Democrats who are now actually confidently saying release the Epstein files, with some notable exceptions, are saying that knowing full well that Trump will never release the actual Epstein files. This is having a total Streisand effect. Do you think they'll try to dump it on someone like Bondi and we'll just blow over? This will just blow over too. I think eventually, as everything else, this will also blow over for sure. But this is not one of those things that's just going to be hand waved by Donald Trump. Something has to happen. Some changes have to happen or something that like pushes the conversation back a little bit. Because every single time Donald Trump speaks on this issue, he ends up advancing the cause. He ends up creating a Streisand effect around the Jeffrey Epstein files. And people go, what the f***? You said you wanted to release this shit. Why aren't you releasing this shit? I think the reason why they're not releasing anything, and not even like, for example, Democrats that are involved, because everybody knows that there are Democrats involved in this, is because there are a fuck ton of Republicans and also apolitical elites, people that fund both parties from time to time, that are also involved. Okay? That's it.
Joining us now with the details on that story. Hey, Chanley.
Hey, Kevin, Rachel, and Charlie. So the president is stepping in to defend his attorney general, Pam Bondi, as doing, quote, a fantastic job after she came under fire from some Trump supporters over the Department of Justice's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The president posting this in part, quote, 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. The president's post coming after some Trump supporters criticized Bond.
Nope. You can't just hand wave this away, bro. I think he thinks this is just like any other story. You're still talking about that guy? Who cares? He was a loser. Stop talking about him. Every time he says that, people go, that's suspicious. Especially considering how many photos there are of Donald Trump hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, dude. I mean, come on.
Or even called for her resignation after the DOJ and the FBI on Sunday released a joint 2-page statement on the Epstein case that concluded there was no celebrity client list, naming those who allegedly took part in Epstein's history as a sexual predator. In February, though, Bondi had indicated that such a document was sitting on her desk. The DOJ also concluded that Epstein did commit suicide in his New York City jail cell in 2019. While awaiting further sex trafficking charges, yet a missing minute in the jail video that was released has only spurred conspiracy theorists. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino reportedly clashed with Bondi over her handling of the Epstein matter last week and has told confidants that he may actually resign if Bondi remains in her post. Guys, we shall see.
Thank you, Chanley.
Thanks, Chanley.
You know, obviously there are lots and lots of questions that have been swirling about Jeffrey Epstein for a long time, for over 10 years, and the government's involvement in it. If there's anybody who could walk in and say, okay, we've resolved all of the questions and there is nothing here, it would be President Trump and his crew. The problem is you can't really do it without giving some explanation, and there has to be some explanation, and I think that's why you have a lot of people still pretty...
This is Trump loyalists in mainstream media trying to give Trump talking points and trying to explain why Trump is failing to Trump. When they say, oh, like, if there's any man who could put this to rest, it's Donald Trump, but he really needs to do a better job of explaining why, after, running around and consistently claiming that Jeffrey Epstein situation was like weird.
With a lot of very valid questions about it.
You absolutely nailed it. You can defuse this ticking time bomb if you simply get out there. Sit down, the AG, get the deputy director, and get the director himself. Put them in front of cameras, have them make a statement, and have them answer questions. We're only talking about 5 or 10 questions. But what this will do is, first of all, restores confidence. Number 2, it answers some of the basics, especially the simple things like...
They didn't even throw the MAGA weirdos a bone and mention the Clintons because they can't. It's the same reason why Barack Obama did not prosecute war criminals of the previous administration. It's because it's like this. When you're above a certain level, when you are a part of the ruling class in the United States of America, that class interest transcends ideological boundaries. Okay? That's it. Trump going after the Clintons is basically like going after himself. Why do you think Donald Trump didn't jail Hillary Clinton after saying lock her up over and over and over again the first time he ran? Why did he not lock her up? I wanted that to happen. It would have been awesome. That's it.
You can't tell me that 1,000 people were hurt and that there are no people out there that we can arrest. You can't tell me that, oh, sorry, we don't have a list. Fine, don't have a list. Tell me who the perpetrators were. Let's depose every single person who might have had a chance to get on that list and might have been out there at that island, and let's talk to them. Let's find out what happened. You're telling me other videos out there in New Mexico and at the island and in New York, and nobody saw anything? I don't buy it, and that's why they need to get out there and face the fire. Doesn't have to be long, but you have to answer questions to the American people, because absent that, the story won't die, and that's a distraction the president doesn't want.
Of course, and in that True Social that he put out, he talked about all his accomplishments.
Yeah.
And he's saying, why let's not let this overcome. And I think he doesn't want that. I think his supporters don't want that. And I think that's why they want just some simple answers.
Yeah. And of course, he's right about that. I mean,
There's no question.
None of this mars any of the extraordinary accomplishments, and we want to keep going.
That's right.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page.
And I think the real
of the United States is trying to cover the Epstein story. It's the double down right here on Truth Social. A big post saying that actually it's the Democrats who wrote the Epstein files.
That was so good. Like, the idea that it's actually the Epstein client list is real, but the Democrats wrote it, which is an implication that, like, if they were to release anything, it's fake because the Democrats put a lot of Republicans on the list. I mean, that's basically what this is, right? Oh, the client list is fake because the Democrats put a bunch of Republicans on it. Meanwhile, that response was so stupid that even Fox News, as you noticed, didn't even run with it. Also, if the Democrats wrote the list, why didn't the Democrats release the list? If it was actually a totally fake list that they put together. Yeah. Even Benny Johnson is speaking out against it. And Benny Johnson is a lapdog of the admin. Felix says, I don't think they could have done a worse job on this if they released a video where it's obviously Trump on the Lolita Express and put a big label over him that says AOC and went, well, look at that. It would have gone over better.
So President Trump has acknowledged that the Epstein files exist here. President Trump has acknowledged that the files were written and that there is something there. He says that they were written, however, by his enemies and therefore will not be released. Whoa, what? That's new in this entire zeitgeist.
This was the absolute worst possible way to deflect away. Oh, there is a list. It's real, but the Democrats wrote it, which implies, in the eyes of every single person that's paying attention to this, which is a lot of MAGA Republicans, this simply is an admission that, you're on the list, or at least your homies are on the list, and that's the reason why you're trying to protect the list from ever being released. Oh, you're saying, the Democrats wrote the list. And it's funny because, look, we know who a lot of these people are. It's not speculation that the Clintons were deeply involved with Jeffrey Epstein. It's not. We know for a fact that the Clintons were directly involved with Epstein. They would go to his New Mexico mansion, the ranch. Okay? We know that. We know Ehud Barak, former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Barak was deeply involved with Jeffrey Epstein. He would go to his New York mansion. Okay? We know Donald Trump used to be deeply involved with Jeffrey Epstein, was friends with him. Jeffrey Epstein would go to Mar-a-Lago. His initial mansion was in Palm Springs, right down the street from Mar-a-Lago. He used Mar-a-Lago as an environment for recruiting young girls, victims, into his sex trafficking schemes. Okay? Or not Palm Springs, sorry, Palm Beach. I apologize. We know all of this stuff is out in the open. None of this is fake. The thing that you could at least point to with Trump, at least in the past, was, he said a lot of positive things about Jeffrey Epstein, but he cut ties with him, as far as we know, after he was outed as a pedophile, as a pedophile sex trafficker, right? As opposed to the people that I just mentioned, Ehud Barak and the Clintons and whatnot, they were long after this was out. They were still maintaining contact. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell was front and center at Chelsea Clinton's wedding, guys. It's not hidden. This stuff is well documented. It's photographed. It's out in the world. It's out in the real world. You don't get here. There she is in the mouse cursor. You can see here's Bill Clinton. Here's Chelsea Clinton. Bill is walking his daughter down the aisle, and there is Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, and if you've ever been to a wedding, especially a wedding of the ruling class like this, that placement is deliberate. Okay, that shows her closeness to the family. Like, she got a aisle seat as a honorary guest at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. That is on purpose. That is how close she is to the family. And this is far after Jeffrey Epstein was already outed. I need you to understand, it's not like this stuff is hidden. Alan Dershowitz is a Jeffrey Epstein affiliate. Alan Dershowitz goes on Fox News still to this day with regular frequency. Part of what Alan Dershowitz used to do was disparage Virginia Giuffre every opportunity he had on Fox News. He was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. So we already know there are plenty of powerful people out and about that have been called out. There are plenty of people who are out and about that have been called into question. Yeah, 1 year ago, we witnessed a miracle. There truly was a guardian angel looking out for him that day. So this is just the client list, which, people say is not a real client list or whatever. Okay, whatever you want to call it, is just people wanting confirmation about what we already know. How much were Jeffrey Epstein's high-profile clients, how much were they involved with the actions of Jeffrey Epstein? Okay, that's it. Who's in the videos that Jeffrey Epstein shot in all of his different properties that were all in his terabyte of video footage that he had carefully crafted and put aside? So that's it.
Something that is wildly interesting. And then he goes all in on supporting Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. No mention of Dan Bongino, where all of this, again, sort of transpired. Okay. So President Trump has acknowledged that the Epstein files exist here. President Trump has acknowledged that the files were written.
It's crazy.
This is just after Elon Musk, who worked with Trump for many months, said that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Obviously, we've already seen deflections from the president about Epstein, saying that it's a disgrace to talk about him.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? It just seems like a desecration.
But today it goes a step further. Quick context. There's been a lot of infighting in the Republican Party over basically who's at fault for the giant botch of the Epstein files, with the majority of Republicans not wanting to believe that Trump himself was against a full release, but rather that he was sort of tricked into not releasing the Epstein files by one of his lackeys. But today, Donald Trump came out and basically backed Pam Bondi, saying
this is perhaps the worst possible way that he could have dealt with it, because at least there was plausible deniability from all of the Trump orbiters that still want to defend him. And now he basically confirmed that he's the one who's standing in opposition for the release of these files.
They're all going after Pam Bondi, who's doing a fantastic job all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. For years, it's Epstein over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Democrats who conned the world with the Russia hoax? They created the Epstein files just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton Steele dossier. Now, this is such a smokescreen and a deflection. This is not a left versus right issue. Epstein never has been. It's the people versus the predators, not left versus right. The people versus the pedophiles, the people versus the people on planes. There ain't no left versus right here. In fact, some of the people who want this the most.
Yeah. A lot of right-wingers in the MAGA base want this. A lot of liberals and leftists want this too. I will say this. I don't think liberals have as much brand loyalty to the Clintons or any other liberal that might be in the Epstein files as do the Republicans to Donald Trump. I don't think that that is a controversial statement, which is precisely the reason why I would say that it's more shocking that the MAGA Republicans still demand the release of these files, knowing full well that this might actually implicate Donald Trump as well. This is one of the few instances where I will say that the reason why, for example, the Democrats didn't make a bigger deal about the Epstein releases during the election cycle when what's his face was running around. Michael Wolff did a bombshell release, and he is a bit of a fabulist, but Michael Wolff did a bombshell release talking about how he has tapes with Jeffrey Epstein, where Jeffrey Epstein tells him that he was still connected to Donald Trump. This, under different circumstances, would be utilized by a competent party against Donald Trump. This was in the lead up to the election. Okay? Do you understand? Like this was a bombshell piece of information leading up to the election cycle. Why did the Democrats not talk about it? Because the Democrats know for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein is connected to some elite pedophile Democrats as well. Because they were too busy defending the Clintons. They were too busy defending power. Trump and the right-wing movement doesn't play by those rules and would rather burn everything to the ground in an effort to win leverage over a conspiracy-backed audience, a conspiracy-minded audience, even if they have no intention of ever releasing these documents. And that is where we are now. I think that, these people were fully aware that they had no intention of releasing these documents, but they still tuned up their base over and over and over again. It's not even a conspiracy, though. I know. Well, this is a conspiracy in the actual original term conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy theory. The Jeffrey Epstein stuff isn't. But conspiracy theorists also obviously look at this as well. They hyper-focus on this as well because it's kind of like 9/11 or the JFK assassination, right? There is still a lot that is unsolved about these things. And so people develop their own personal theories, some of which are far-fetched and others that are closer to reality. But the people that are invested in conspiracy theories in general also tune into these like real world conspiracies that are quote unquote unsolved. And Trump's base is full of guys who believe in far-fetched conspiracy theories that also understandably are hyper-focusing on this conspiracy, not conspiracy theory, but conspiracy, to conspire.
Most are people on the right, even on Truth Social, obviously a hugely Trump-favored place. Everybody is saying, no, this is unacceptable. You have to release the files. Later in the post, Trump also says that these are radical left-inspired documents and to not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. But actually, we all do care about it. You know who doesn't actually want this out? The elites. That's why they've never done it. That's why it was a compelling pitch when Donald Trump hinted to his base that maybe he was going to release the files. People largely didn't trust the job that Biden had done. That's why it was a compelling story. So the idea now that it was Biden and Obama who invented the Epstein files is absolutely preposterous. They don't want that out either. And maybe that's because, as a producer of 60 Minutes alleged, Ghislaine Maxwell implied that there were tapes on Trump and also tapes on Clinton. You know who else said it? Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, saying Epstein said, what I know about both candidates, the 2016 election would have to be canceled. So this whole idea that this is a left or right thing, it's not. It's the elites. Anybody who was on that plane, anybody who was associated with Epstein, seen with Epstein, even if they did nothing wrong, they don't want that out. Everyone who wasn't seen with Epstein, wasn't on that plane, of course they all want the files out. And what's interesting is obviously the Trump administration has sort of played footsie with this idea for a long time, playing to their base. They know this is a big issue. They had the influencers stand out there with a bunch of released material. But we also showed clips of Donald Trump implying that maybe Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew were doing bad things on the island.
Bill Clinton.
Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island. That island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew.
So consistently, Trump has hinted that.
Yeah. His FBI, by the way, Trump's own FBI, Trump's own Department of Justice, this past week stopped the Prince Andrew probe. That's right. Trump and his Department of Justice officially ended the probe into Prince Andrew. Now, Prince Andrew is, unlike some of these other suspected affiliates, or suspected rapists, let's say, child rapists, that are known affiliates, because if we were to categorize this broadly, like, you have affiliates, but we don't know what they did, and then you have people who you suspect as being affiliates, but again, you don't know the extent of their affiliation. And last but not least, there is the third category, which is an affiliate that has an actual victim come out and name with footage. Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew fall in the third category. Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew, unironically, were named and have been photographed with Ghislaine Maxwell and even Virginia Giuffre, as is this photo, as you can see. Virginia Giuffre, who unfortunately passed away recently after an incident in Australia. Same with the Dersh. And as I said, Prince Andrew was even basically disowned by his own mother, the Queen of England. So, like, that person, after being outed and had a bunch of these people yell about him, even that investigation being dropped by the Department of Justice is crazy. Here's another version of this as well. This is a confirmed Epstein victim, Sarah Ransom, former prisoner of his island, in contact with the FBI deputy director as recently as last week, accusing Peter Mendelsohn of sex trafficking children. To date, he's been asked about it publicly only 3 times, once replying simply, "F off." So we know all this. So there are people who are directly photographed with victims. It's so strange that they wouldn't even go after those people. But the very fact that the very refusal of prosecuting even people who have been pictured with victims, people who are like known offenders, you know, that paired up with like victim testimony, photographic evidence, that makes it so. I mean, that obviously creates a very interesting environment around this. It's an active cover-up.
Maybe these guys were involved with Epstein. Maybe it was bad. But turns out all these guys knew each other and knew Epstein. We know this in part from a Piers Morgan interview where he talks to a lady who went to a dinner party with Trump, Clinton, Epstein, and Prince Andrew.
Extraordinary collection of very high-powered people. How did they all interact with Epstein? How did Trump, Clinton, and Prince Andrew interact with him?
Everyone was very, very pally with him, you know. It was like there was close bonds. You could see that.
So these guys knew each other, apparently had dinner parties together, all of them together. Trump later accuses 2 of the guys of doing bad things. And then when we release the files, can we release the files? Well, no, actually, no, we can't do that. Nobody cares about that. The reason why seems obvious. Epstein knew Prince Andrew. Yes. He knew Bill Clinton. Yes. But he also knew Donald Trump. And recently tapes were released of Epstein talking and calling Donald Trump his closest friend.
So how do you know this? Donald's closest friend.
So it makes intuitive sense to distance yourself from files that may or may not have your name in it, and even distance yourself from the people involved. It's worth stating Trump actually denied knowing Prince Andrew.
I don't know Prince Andrew.
Of course, this was immediately debunked by photos showing the 2 together. And of course, showing that they clearly knew each other as of 2000. Now, the reason you would deny knowing Prince Andrew, even though you did, is obvious. At the time, he was facing allegations related to Epstein. By the way, allegations that now are basically over. Prince Andrew is very happy about us dropping the Epstein probe. A source for The Sun said he's only been abroad once since the scandal.
Yeah. I mean, Prince Andrew is like the tip of the spear, right? So the very fact that Prince Andrew himself is also like, who is very obviously guilty. The very fact that the DOJ would drop that is crazy. Tip of the iceberg, sorry.
Erupted. Prince Andrew has always been very nervous about going abroad and always looking over his shoulder, as he should be in my opinion. But now he's very happy because the guy who never met him but was photographed with him in 2000 just ended the investigation. Now, I have to say, Trump's been pretty consistent on the fact he has no interest in releasing the Epstein files in full. He said this multiple times. The reason most people have sort of a false memory of this, the reason it's sort of a Mandela effect that he campaigned on the idea of releasing the Epstein files is because Fox News released a deceptively edited clip where they cut out the part where he said, yeah, I'll probably release the Epstein files. And they cut out the part where then he backtracks on that completely.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
And that's the part most of us saw. Of course, later, people found out that the full clip showed him.
Who's that right there interviewing Donald Trump? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's only the Secretary of Defense. At the time, he was just a simple Fox News commentary person. But now, of course, he has a different career. DUI hire. Classic.
And that's the part most of us saw. Of course, later, people found out that the full clip showed him saying basically the opposite.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
We also have Bill O'Reilly on News Nation saying he just talked to Trump back on St. Patrick's Day, and Trump basically said the same thing.
He said, and I agree, there are a lot of names associated with Epstein that had nothing to do with Epstein's conduct. They maybe had lunch with him or maybe had some correspondence for one thing or another. If that name gets out, those people are destroyed because there's not going to be any context. Media doesn't care about context. So you can't do that.
So over and over, we've seen the same answer from the president. Not the fact that, oh no, the Epstein files, it's a lefty conspiracy. No, actually, it's the worry that people in the files are going to have their lives destroyed by the files. That sounds a lot more like covering for the people in the files than it does covering the victims. We've heard Kash Patel and Pam Bondi talk about, oh, we got to protect the victims.
Go through it very cautiously to protect all the victims.
Like, it's pretty simple with the Epstein stuff. A lot of people in positions of power are understandably making this somewhat logical calculation that if this were to be released, because elite pedophilia and like sex trafficking rings are of bipartisan consensus, that it would basically ruin societal elite. It's not enough that they basically have designed a system where they extract all of your surplus labor value and become immensely powerful and control all facets of media, all facets of information by social media, also simultaneously making you work day in, day out and see nothing in return for that. But then on top of that, there is obviously some additional ties that hold people together. I don't think it's like ritualistic or anything like that, but I do think that there's at least like some kind of a blackmail operation involved, like that Jeffrey Epstein was seen as like a fixer of sorts, right? And therefore, this would implicate a lot of societal elite, whether liberal or Republican. Okay, it's a mutual. It's the pedophilia. Exactly, it's the pedophile MAD, mutual assured destruction. So these guys they're not invested in undermining the system that they are now in charge of, understandably so. But for us on the outside, this goes beyond the normalized attitude that we have, where we do not recognize our class position and we do not recognize our class interests. But this is one thing that we all recognize as like morally repugnant behavior, which is pedophile sex trafficking. Is morally repugnant. It's completely unacceptable. It's the most evil thing you can do. And therefore, many people don't give a shit about society falling apart if that's the case. Because why would they? If the foundations of what keep the American societal elite together is this like pedophilia sex trafficking ring, then yeah, break it, burn it to the ground, right? It's understandable that people would be like, I don't want any association with that. It's not even something that you can, it's not something that you can simply just like wash away. It's also not like capitalism in the sense that you can get people to be on board with it, to get people invested in it, to get people to feel like they have a upper hand, to get people to feel like if they were to just be loyal soldiers to capital, that one day they can also be a billionaire or a millionaire. There is no meritocratic propaganda to sex trafficking of minors. No one sees Jeffrey Epstein as an ambitious figure. No one thinks, oh, one day I too want to work really hard and be in the inner circle of elite pedophile sex traffickers in the way that they do feel about capitalism in general and the prosperity that it brings if you are a willing participant, that one day you too could be a millionaire. There's no there are temporarily embarrassed millionaires and billionaires. There are no temporarily embarrassed pedophiles. Okay? It's not an aspirational figure. Do you understand? This is the reason why there is a In the most predictable, most American way, this is the one thing that unites class interest, that actually creates class consciousness. Ironically enough, we cannot instill class consciousness on the boundaries of class. But of course, because we're so conspiratorially minded, this is the one area where there is actually some semblance of class consciousness and class unity, which is crazy.
We're not going to re-victimize women. We're not going to put that back out there.
But when we actually hear the president talk about it, and the real reason, right, because he's ultimately the decision maker on whether this gets released, what the real reason is cited is not about victims. It is about the people, the names in the thing. So I find it disgusting. They're using the victims of Epstein as a shield for the people who are actually in these files. Now, of course, who specifically is he worried about? Well, maybe it's his friends. Maybe it's people he has dinner parties with. And of course, maybe it's him, Donald Trump, that he's worried about. The journalist Michael Wolff actually quotes Steve Bannon as saying Jeffrey Epstein was really feared in 2016 for what he knew.
I'll have the full video here as well.
I was there, and it was that moment. And Bannon said to Epstein, and he said this in a good humor. He said, during the campaign, it would be the 2016 campaign, you, meaning Jeffrey Epstein, were the only person I was afraid of.
So that is 3 independent sources. You've got the Ira Rosen quote, the Michael Wolff quote, and that Mark Epstein quote, all saying that there is some type of damaging information on Trump. 2 of those people specifically implying that it's also on Clinton as well. You also have the Elon Musk allegation from left field, but he doesn't source anybody, so we won't count that. Either way, I must say, I don't know for sure if Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Donald Trump were heavily involved in anything nefarious or not. That is exactly why we should all demand that we open these files. But the possibility of both Democrats and Republicans being implicated in some of these files, whether they did it or not, or just knew him, may give a plausible reason for why the Epstein files have been heavily redacted this whole time. There are very powerful people involved. We've known that. The reason we've been given, of course, is that, we've got to protect the victims. The real reason behind the scenes is really they're protecting the powerful people. Now, the most charitable interpretation is, as Bill O'Reilly said, it's because those people would have their lives ruined. They had nothing to do with Epstein, but we know some of them probably did. We know this from the Miami Herald because the FBI agents who searched Epstein's house found a cache of thick black binders all labeled with names that contained hundreds of naked or semi-naked photographs on CDs that Epstein stored in various places. The labels on the binders were redacted from photos because prosecutors said they were names of third parties who were not relevant to the case they are mounting against Ghislaine Maxwell. So my question is, are those some of the third parties? Their names are on binders with a bunch of explicit photographs that Epstein was storing? That seems like something we should be investigating. Or what about the fact that since the FBI is saying there's no blackmail involved with Jeffrey Epstein, we investigate the Wall Street Journal report that Jeffrey Epstein allegedly tried to extort Bill Gates over an extramarital affair? Because I thought there was no blackmail involved. And my real plea to people is to not allow comments like this, these statements about partisan politics, to trick you into thinking this is some type of left versus right issue.
No, it's elites versus regular people that want to know the truth.